So my thing is, the land belongs to Israel. They can't coexist with the Palestinians. But the problem with the Palestinians, or I should say, the Palestinians got Philistines and Palestinians, old timers is Philistines. The Palestinians, they're Muslims. And in the Quran, they're commanded not to coexist with Jews and Israelites. And as a matter of fact, they're commanded to kill the Israelites and the Jews.
All these different beliefs that feel that they are correct. So inevitably it's going to lead to confrontation. And then if it's coming down to like who land belongs to, and then that's emboldened by religious belief, that's why you have a war that's, been going on there. Yeah, forever.
Yeah.
And
it's never going to stop. And these innocent people, they want to escape, but they can't because Egypt is not going to let them escape because Egypt is right there. Where they're going to go to Israel, they can't go there. So it's like, what can they do? Well, they're going to go into the water. So it's just this horrible situation. I call myself like the violent Hebrew, right? So like I'm very Old Testament, but I also take into consideration the New Testament, right? So that's pretty much if you get it. So I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
But I'm also a Hebrew, an Israelite.
For me, it's inevitable that human failure will always exist and that every empire will always fall at some point in time.
Right.
Because humans are not infallible. They become greedy. They become power hungry. They care less and less about the people underneath them. And sooner or later, the gap, and we see it in America now where it's like, what is it? Like the working class is like not even like a thing that exists, right? Like,
ago, it's the conversation. Yeah. Take your mind different places. Now you know. So yeah.
So fucking yeah. I've been waiting for this podcast for a minute now. And before we even get to introduce these guys, I just want to say I'm very excited for this episode. Both of these individuals are good people that took the time to schedule this day and just express some words. We got a lot to talk about, but let's get right into it. Right here to my right, we have Samuel FORJOE. Right here to my left, we have T.J. McGOWAN. I want to know, guys, what are your thoughts on what's going on right now with Hamas and Israel?
To be honest, I was completely clueless about the backstory. I know Israel, since I'm a biblical guy, I know they claim it's the promised land, which it is. My only thing is I don't know if they in particular are part of the Israelites, but they speak the language. So how can they not be if they speak the language, right? So that part I understood. I also know that the land does belong to them because God says it belongs to them, right? Like if God, so I'm going to get into it a little bit, but if somebody builds a building, right, it's theirs. The land is theirs. They build a building on the land, and then they don't touch the building. They leave for a while. And some other people come and live in the land. Those are the Canaanites, right? They come and they live in the land. Then God, the person who builds the land, tells a different group, oh, I give you permission to live in this building that I built, right? And then somebody will say, oh, but you left that building. Now other people are inhabiting that building. What are you going to say? No, I built the building. I can say who belongs in the building or not, right? Mm-hmm. So you tell these group of people, they can go and live in the building. And the group of people tell you, well, the building's already occupied with Canaanites. And he says, well, I give you permission to tell them to leave. If they don't leave, I give you permission to take them out by force, right? So if the Canaanites come and live in the building and they refuse to leave, knowing that they didn't build the land, they didn't build the building, then they're the ones looking for problems, right? Mm-hmm. So the Israelites come, they finally get most of the Canaanites out of the building and they live in that building. But then long story short, the owner of the building takes them out because they're not living the way he wants them to live in his building, right? Mm. So they get exiled. Now a bunch of people come and live in the building like happened the first time, the Canaanites or the Philistines, which are now the Palestinians, right?
And just for the sake of the argument, the building is in reference to the land.
The land the land and the building is in reference to the land. right? So I'm just using the building because it has inhabitants, right? So now we know prophecy says that God will bring them back to the building. And so the people, they believe this land does belong to us because the landlord says it belongs to us. So they have that authority from the landlord, right? Not from any human, not from any human conqueror or anything like that, but from the landlord. So when they come back and they occupy that building, which isn't fully occupied, by the way, if you check the history, a lot of that, it was a barren land. Some Palestinians were living there, a few. And there were still some native Israelites living there too. They were coexisting. But it wasn't like it was full of Palestinians when the Israelis came. No, it was a barren wasteland. You have Mark Twain, I think, wrote about it. Many scholars wrote that they actually went there to Israel. And they saw that it wasn't really occupied. So when the Israelites came back, now that they're building their infrastructure and it's no longer a barren wasteland, now the Palestinians are like, wait, this is our land. And we were already living here, but actually they weren't. So my thing is, the land belongs to Israel. They can't coexist with the Palestinians. But the problem with the Palestinians, or I should say, the Palestinians got Philistines and Palestinians, old timers as Philistines. The Palestinians, they're Muslims. And in the Quran, they're commanded not to coexist with Jews and Israelites. And as a matter of fact, they're commanded to kill the Israelites and the Jews. So if the Israelites, first of all, the land belongs to them. They occupy the land when it wasn't really occupied by the Palestinians. And now the Palestinians, because they see that Israel has made the land desirable to live in, now they want to say, oh, we belong in this land. Well, and Israel is saying, no, we can coexist. We'll take our land, but you can live with us. And they're like, no, you can't live here. And our law says, especially the Hamas, they're more extremists. They follow what the law says verbatim, right? So now other other Muslims might not say they want to fight against the Israelites, but then they won't be true Muslims because their Quran tells them that they can't coexist with Jews, right? So the Hamas are the real Muslims, if you want to speak the truth. So, and they're extremists. So Israel has every right to defend themselves against the Palestinians.
TJ, with your way of thinking in life, what are your thoughts on how not only religion but God is playing a role in these encounters in society right now? What are your thoughts on it?
I mean, bluntly, that's sort of like why I'm not religious.
I get that.
Is because I view history shows many confrontations and war is usually centered around sort of religion. Even when I grew up Roman Catholic, and everyone used to point to like the Crusades, or that there's sort of all these different beliefs that feel that they are correct. So inevitably it's going to lead to confrontation. And then if it's coming down to like who land belongs to, and then that's emboldened by religious belief, that's why you have a war that's, been going on there. For forever.
Yeah.
Because
it's never going to stop.
Each major religion kind of claims that is the Holy Land. They all sort of like sprouted out of that. And, the closer you are to believing that yours is the truth, the more you're going to be either emboldened or extremed, or you're not going to give way. My view then, besides like the historic context, is in like present day context, is whether it's Israel and Palestine or how I feel about how America gets involved in things. Then you have people that are living underneath power structures that might claim that they're religious and that they're following something, but might also have political wealth, greed, other motives
behind it,
to keep people under their boot. So then you have tons of innocent people living on the other side of a wall from one another that are sort of under two different boots, where you have them, and I can only look at it from sitting over here safe and comfortably as sort of having my compassion kind of bleed both ways because I can't say that the death of these innocent civilians is worth more or less than the death of these innocent civilians.
Right.
So I can like feel my compassion, and then my rage or my animosity, I tilt upwards at the people in power over them that are basically putting them in a crossfire for whether it's land or religion or oil or gas or whatever it is. And so I my opinion on what's going on, first I'm going to say that I'm ignorant to a lot of what's going on, but that I feel for. I think there's multiple truths. It's weird. I kind of was talking about someone last night. Like that, there can be multiple truths that you can condemn Hamas and have complete compassion and feel for like my Jewish friends, family members, acquaintances, coworkers, and then I can also feel that the answer to that is not to like triple, quadruple the amount of dead innocent civilians, women, and children, because these are also innocent people that are living and suffering already, that are now paying for what people out of their control have done to other innocent people. And it's like a vicious cycle, right? It's like, and then we can constantly, especially with like social media, you see a lot of sort of like, well, I'm not going to talk about this because you never talked about this. And I'm not going to, and so then everyone's sort of just kind of like, it's like, well,
rabbit hole.
It's sort of like, I'm not going to feel compassion for Palestinians because they're not feeling compassion for our dead innocent civilians. And then it's, well, you didn't feel compassion for Palestinian journalists that were assassinated 2 years ago. Well, then you didn't, and you really realize that like it's innocent people living somewhere underneath regimes that they like. It's like I say in America, like I live in America, but there's plenty of things that I condemn about the American government, politics, where we stick our hand in different parts of the world, like, and we're all innocent civilians beneath a power structure that we have to live in and also coexist with and also disagree with and also feel compassion for how we inflict. I look at like post 9/11, I was probably like a little too young to fully grasp, like in hindsight, like the bloodlust of America, like right afterwards. Or it was like, you have the right to defend yourself. You have the right to go after the people that did this. And then you read down and you're like, we killed so many more innocent people over a war that is like up until last year was the majority of our younger lives. Like the Afghanistan, Iraq, like that was our entire like childhood. I mean, that was like I was 16 when that happened, and then so that's 16. I'm 38 now, so that's 21 years of my life was post 9/11, where now you look at the numbers and you're like, wow, we bombed schools, we bombed hospitals, we killed tons of innocent people as like a retributive action. And so it kind of feels similar to me now, where you're kind of like, and all I'm seeing is just innocent people dying everywhere.
And to support your point, what makes it worse for those in Gaza, the Palestinians, is they're in that strip of land, right? And so they can't escape. Mind you, is that place is jam packed like sardines.
There's no ports.
There's no place for them to escape to, and it's millions of people in this strip, right? And Hamas only makes up like a small percentage of these people. So now, if they go and they attack Israel, which they've done, Israel always overreacts in their retribution. And so if you throw a bomb,
6,000 bombs in the past week.
If you throw a bomb in this crowded area, you're not just gonna kill Hamas. You're killing thousands of innocent people. And these innocent people, they want to escape, but they can't because Egypt is not gonna let them escape because Egypt is right there. Where they're gonna go to Israel, they can't go there. So it's like, what can they do? What, they're gonna go into the water? So it's just this horrible situation,
And they basically said like like taking the water, electricity, and food from them. You're not taking it from Hamas. They're prepared for that. They're hidden places where they have stockpiles of food and water
because they know what they're gonna do
and generators.
Preparing for you.
So everyone above ground
people.
Everyone above ground becomes their civilian shield.
Yeah, it's terrible.
And there's no ports. And then there's only like really like a couple ways in and out, and they've already shown that they were bombing those too.
Yeah,
they were waiting for them to
leave.
And so I mean, any rational person is like, you can't evacuate 2 million people in 24 hours.
Right.
You know, like, it's just like, you can say we gave them a 24-hour warning.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, yeah.
Where are they supposed to go?
Right.
Like, and it's sort of like, that's when you see people basically saying, like, you hope it doesn't be used as a justification for genocide. You know, like, yes, you have the right to defend yourself against horrible actions if you're targeting those people.
Yeah, those specific.
But if you're
individuals.
using it, again, I'll go back to like post 9/11 as a way to like it's very clear we did a lot of it to like gain ground on oil,
Of course.
or you know, like there's no weapons of mass destruction, you know, all these sort of things. But when you're in the like the tornado of the immediate response after the horrible, like I know someone that died in September 11th. Your immediate human reaction is like sadness, grief, anger. Give me revenge. And then like you're blinded, and then you kind of come out of the cloud and you're like, all that happened is more innocent people have perished.
In the heat of the anger, what you did.
Or it's like more innocent people have perished, and then you end up orphaning more potential extremists that hate you.
Yeah.
So it's a
perpetual battle,
crazy
back and forth.
And then all we can do is we can converse about it. We can do it. And then last night I was like, I could converse. I could have my opinion. I was like, I'm powerless. Like I'm powerless. I can converse with other people about it. I can reach out to like my Jewish friends, my Muslim friends, like, you know, on a human level to give compassion and thoughts. But at the end of the day, you still feel very powerless. And then it's easy for me to say this I'm sitting on my couch last night, comfortable and safe.
Yeah.
But then I'm going through my head. I'm like what these people, like I can't even fathom like what anyone over there is going through right now. You can be compassionate, but you know, and so that's why my sort of like bleeding heart always comes into the equation, where I just like I can't weigh these dead innocent civilians more or less than these. It's a travesty
because they're innocent
across the board, and you know, and you can only get angry. But then you're like, I can get angry at the power structure, but what do you do to, like, as an individual to change that? You know, and it's like I can barely feel like I even have power to do it here, you know, and it just ends up becoming just it's just tragic. You know, you're sort of just like, how do you get to these points where like the callousness of and then I'm like, and then I get mad at here, like go on social media or whatever it is, and you're like, then because you're detached from it, it's so easy for people to become callous about like loss of life. Like we only have a life, like you're like, we're all gonna die, and sometimes that can be a scary thought individually, or thinking of losing a loved one, or I'm like, how can people be so sort of like flippant about like, oh, like we just gotta wipe them off the map, like statements like that get made. You're like, do you hear what you're like? Do you really not care about human life, like at any degree, or do you only care about yours, like what's within the distance of who I care about, and then outside of that? And that's like a very scary thought to me, you know.
Samuel, how do you feel God plays a role in what might come out of all this?
Yeah, it's a lot of the thing with prophecy is that anyone can claim they understand prophecy. Prophecy is really, really difficult, and as a matter of fact, you won't know the prophecy has been fulfilled, or you won't understand the prophecy until after it has happened. Then you look back and then you compare the scriptures, and you say, well, then is it really prophecy? Well, it is, because when you examine the situation and you look back at it in the scriptures and you see that it happened exactly as it was written, then you will say, oh yeah, it did get fulfilled.
Can you give some examples before we get into further context of that? Can you give some examples of certain scriptures that have been fulfilled?
Okay, so like,
can I just ask one question, just contextual? What is, like, I'm kind of like an agnostic atheist, but like sort of like, but I was raised Roman Catholic, so I'm just curious what your faith is, just so as I'm listening, I can. No. I just want to like.
No, I didn't get to illustrate that from the beginning. We just jumped right in.
Yeah, that's cool.
We should have a personal introduction. Samuel, would you like to personally introduce yourself and your beliefs?
Yeah.
And then we could go. TJ,
No, just because I'm curious, but like there's obviously so many beliefs. So when I'm like, all right, well,
true.
I want a frame of mind of just like know.
Well, I'm not Muslim.
No.
Well, I'm both Old Testament and New Testament. Most Christians are New Testament.
Yeah.
I'm both.
Okay.
So I call myself like the violent Hebrew, right? So like I'm very Old Testament, but I also take into consideration the New Testament, right? So that's pretty much if you get it. So I'm a Christian,
yeah,
but I'm also a Hebrew, an Israelite. You know what I
Okay.
mean? Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm both. Yeah.
Okay. No,
So the whole Bible, I'm all about it. I'm not just New Testament. I don't believe that the Old Testament is done away with. I don't believe that. Yeah.
so it's sort of like a mesh of two, or like
Yeah.
Okay.
And parts of the Old Testament are done away with, yes, but there are parts of it that still applies today.
Okay. No, thanks. I just wanted to know.
Yeah, no
Just some
problem.
context.
No problem.
Yeah.
So can we get back to
The prophecy thing, right?
Well, before that, before in the context of what we're dealing with now in today's society, what scriptures have you read that were already presented?
Fulfilled. So like, okay, you would have. Let me be more precise with some. You have one like about Egypt, right? Egypt before was a booming. It was a world power. Everyone knows Egypt was like pretty much the first world power of all the world powers that exist today. Right now, you would say it's Great Britain and United States. They're the world powers, right? Back then, the first was Egypt. It was prophesied by God that Egypt, all the lush greenland, all the vegetations, it was very prosperous land, right? He prophesied that it would be a barren wasteland. It would be deserted, like a desert. That's exactly what it is today. But for you to foresee that, you know how wild that is to be living in a land that's a world that's rich like Egypt, that everybody goes to in the time of famine. And then for you to say that because of all the gods that they worship, I will show you how powerless your gods are. And so now all the gods, like, what are they? The statues are broken. It's deserted, right? Egypt is nothing but desert now. So that's one prophecy that came in fulfillment. You have another prophecy about Babylon the Great. Babylon, now mind you, Babylon is like a strip of a land, right? Even the walls, the ancient walls, the landmark can still be seen today. That was also a world power, Nebuchadnezzar. As a matter of fact, I believe it was Saddam Hussein who tried to rebuild Babylon. But God prophesied not only its destruction and that no one will live there, but it can never be rebuilt. Saddam, if I'm not mistaken, Saddam Hussein spent millions of dollars trying to rebuild Babylon, that strip. It couldn't be done. It couldn't be done. And so that's a testament to what God speaks. Now, mind you, if you're spending millions of dollars to try to go against that prophecy, surely you should be able to do something. It's going to take some supernatural force for you to not be able to. So he couldn't do it. You know, that's another prophecy that was fulfilled. You also have about Cyrus. Mind you, remember I told you that Israel was abandoned. It became a barren wasteland, right? Cyrus, it was prophesied at the time of Isaiah. Now this is like ancient times, right? In comparison to Cyrus, I forget the dates, but if you check the dates, there is like thousands of years apart. It was prophesied at the time of Isaiah that Cyrus, or if it was Daniel, that Cyrus would help the Jews to rebuild Jerusalem. But mind you, this is the Assyrians, the Persians. They're not even an empire yet. So first you have to foresee them becoming a world power. You have to foresee them having the authority to say that, yeah, I give you Jews the authority to rebuild Jerusalem, and then it actually happens. And he called him by name, right? So that's another prophecy. So like, I'm using these examples because these are world powers and this is history. This is credible. And you can see it today. Like the evidence is still there till this day, right? So that's just a few examples.
Okay, and how do you feel that this event that's going on right now is...
Yeah, okay, well, the thing with the event that's going on today with Israel and Hamas, there's a prophecy that says that as soon as they declare peace and security, then sudden destruction will befall them. That is talking about Israel. Now, Israel was on the way to trying to promote peace before this thing happened. and all of a sudden this thing has happened, right? How do you go from trying to make peace to something like this, where the death toll in Israel is the greatest that it's ever been since, like the Holocaust that they say. So it's no coincidence. But the problem with that prophecy, that's the thing, is anytime, any place declares peace, there is always sudden destruction. If you check the history books. So it's not an isolated incident. You understand? So it could be that this prophecy is in relation to any person that tries to declare peace. This would apply to them, not just Israel. You understand? Yeah. So what exactly was your question again?
The prophecy, like, how do you feel the
right? Okay, yeah. So that's it. Like I said, prophecy is a very difficult thing to interpret.
Right.
I don't even believe that prophecy has yet been fulfilled, even though it looks like it's being fulfilled now. I feel like it is going to be even worse than that.
What gives you that impression?
Because we're not really in the last days like people think. So if we're not really in the last days, and of course people will say, yeah, we are. We're on the brink of it, but it hasn't happened yet. Until America falls and collapse, until you need to take a barrel of gold to the market to buy one loaf of bread. We haven't experienced the last days yet, because it's going to be terrible. America is living in luxury. America hasn't experienced anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can say Africans are, you can say certain parts of the world are, third world countries are, but until America experiences it, the great power of America, in Great Britain, the last days hasn't begun. So what's happening now is just part of the signs of the beginning of the last days, but not yet.
TJ, how do you feel about this?
So what I find interesting, actually, like, as I'm listening, like, obviously, I don't agree with sort of like prophecy, but like my interpretation of all of that throughout history is like, it's like for me, it's inevitable that human failure will always exist, and that every empire will always fall at some point in time, because humans are not infallible. They become greedy, they become power hungry, they care less and less about the people underneath them, and sooner or later, the gap, and we see it in America now, where it's like, what is it? Like the working class is like not even like an thing that exists, right? Like a couple generations ago, my grandparents had 6 kids, 2 cars, a house, and a vacation house.
Right. And what were they doing?
And one was a janitor and one was a part-time phone operator, right?
Yeah.
Right? And so like the inevitability of power and greed for me is more how I would contextualize history and the falling of empires, and that we're more predictable than we're not. That you can have like just optimism and all this sort of stuff starting out, and it eventually becomes corrupted somewhere along the way, and people suffer from it, and empires fall, and sort of that's kind of how I would contextualize sort of that part of history.
Right.
Which then I could see how someone would say, well, this is the prophecy that I've been told coming to fruition. Where I would say that people that kind of see prophecies or philosophize are just
We're able to have
very intelligent.
Likely
like we're having an intelligent conversation, but there are people that exist in which their cerebral capacity would blow the doors off, off of us, because they can sort of kind of contextualize human history and say, well, eventually, America is going to be the next Roman Empire. It's like, look at the way it's going. We have historical context to how democracies have fallen in like the exact same way, or how you can be a democracy one day and then all of a sudden, you look like a Germany and you're like, the democracy falls, someone slips in and fascism rises, or, different parts of the world, how like you can kind of see the blueprint has happened for eons of sort of how empires have fallen.
But what if someone says about a place that's as lush, the most luscious garden, that is going to be a desert? Like that's not foreseeing a fall of an empire. That's foreseeing a change of an environment. You know what I mean? Like how would you explain that one?
I can only explain it now for me, is that like we know that land mass, ocean, air, all naturally changes over time and shifts.
Okay.
And that I mean, I was in the Outer Banks like a month ago, and like tour guide was literally telling us like they should have never built houses here because outside of this 2 mile range, they're all submerging underwater. I mean, it's happening in Florida too, where it's like we already knew that like in 50 years, that beach isn't going to exist and that road's not going to exist. So like my practical scientific mind would kick in, which then, throughout history, at one point, those type of people were persecuted. They were they were deemed insane, that they were sort of like telling time with the sun and, predicting like events, was at times was considered heresy to almost be scientific. So like my brain's always going to kick into that. And the last thing I would say is, do you feel if you're told a prophecy is like going to happen, how much does that influence people that believe it to make it come true?
Yeah, good question. I want to answer that after you say what you.
Because I think of that with like politics, and it's so say like we have a right and a left here, right? I mean, we have tons of people in the middle, but just for the sake of America, you have a right and a left, and typically, like the conservative side, when it comes to like government influence, they're very like small government. Government doesn't work for you, and sometimes there's evidence where because they believe that so hard, they make the systems of government,
and it comes to pass.
Like, they throw a wrench in the system to be like, look, it didn't work. I told you it wasn't going to work.
Yeah, I understand.
And so,
that.
kind of like, so sometimes I feel like certain modern day things, if you are believing this is how it will be, how much of that influences you enacting it?
I have an answer for that.
Again, this is just a curiosity. It's not like a judgment.
No, it's a really good question. And the only thing that I wanted to say in regard, no, it's okay. In regards to what he was saying in terms of like to foresee change of environment, that is something interesting, right? Because like, of course, now we have enough information and enough facts to scientifically prove why deserts become deserts or why certain areas become certain areas, but not then.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Not like, whoa, like thousands of years ago when they didn't have all that information.
Yeah, because we talking about like the first world power, you know what I mean? Like we talking ancient times, and they, and someone is prophesying against them. Like, first of all, the brass to do that, right? But
sure.
but to answer your question, how people can influence that being fulfilled. That's why I gave the specific examples that I gave, because these things can't be influenced by humanity. It will take something outside of them. So like I gave you the example of Babylon. First of all, it was also like Egypt, a luscious place. Nebuchadnezzar was known for his luscious gardens and the architecture. So this is also in the history books, right? To foretell that not only will it become deserted and it will become like a desert, but that it can't be rebuilt, right? No human can. This is we're talking about thousands of acres, right? No human can cause that to happen or not happen. You understand? You can't really affect agriculture in that way for thousands of miles to make it a desert. And then no matter how much, other future elites come by to try to go against that and try to rebuild it, spending millions of dollars putting it into the land, still can't be done. How would you explain that taking place if not divine intervention? You know what I mean?
To a degree, I would also say I don't know enough about that, like where I would be able to even speak on the history of Babylon, or so I'm not going to sit here and try to make something up, But one thing I'll say about like prophecy is like, say right now you posed some kind of concrete question to us, and we chose opposite sides of what we thought the outcome was going to be.
Right.
One of us would be right and one of us would be wrong.
You're right.
And then other people could say, well, he was the prophet then, because it ended up being right. Or is it just choice?
Yeah, I like that you said that, because that's the thing with Bible prophecy is Yehovah, God, he deliberately mentions explicit details. it's so explicit. When you go through the Bible, it's so explicit that it's almost like they want you to find at least one of those things and say, aha, look, okay, they got 95% right, but 5% was wrong. It's almost like he's challenging you, the future, to say, because think about it, why not make it broad? Why not make it broad like, oh, Asia's going to be barren. But to say it's going to be barren and this and this, and it's going to be barren because of this and this and this and this, you're putting way too much detail than needs to be stated. So it's almost like they want for you to say, wow, with all this detail, surely at least one of them is going to be wrong. And it's like he wants you to challenge it. And then historians, archaeologists, they feed off of that. And lo and behold, that's why the Bible is what it is today. Because there's so much room for it to be flawed that it still stood the test of time. It's not likely for that to happen. You know what I mean? Those are the things that makes it too supernatural. Way too much detail than is required.
Do you feel like us three sitting here have free will, or everything we do is God's will?
No. It's free will. It's free will. Free will is exactly what it is. But
because like when I grew up, you had, even in like Roman Catholicism, certain adults or elders or whatever. Like I always got confused because it was like a mixed bag of like the CCD teachers that were like, you know, if you don't shape up, you're going to hell.
Right.
Like, and
by the way, the Bible doesn't teach hell.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so like, you know, so it's like I had that growing up, and then like in other contexts, like, so I was also a Boy Scout. So I went to CCD, and then I was also a Boy Scout, and obviously like the Boy Scouts of America are like steeped in Roman Catholicism, Christianity. Like it came out of sort of like that's always been like a kind of like a backbone of it. Obviously there was like scouts of every belief, but part of it was that like there was always a like a chaplain. Like every troop has a chaplain. If you don't believe in that, you don't have to attend, but it always was there. But even now, when I was a kid, it used to be like he was a little bit more lax, where he would be like, well, no, like I believe people have free will.
Yeah.
Like I believe people have free will. But then when I would go to CCD,
they would say you don't.
They would kind of, and then you're like, is this just a teacher trying to keep me in line? Or like where it was more like, well, it's God, this is all God's will. And then I used to get so confused as a kid because I'm like, I got one person telling me I have free will. And another person basically kind of telling me that like everything I'm going to do or haven't done yet has already been predestined for me. And it kind of actually deflates your like will to want to exist in the world if you're being told at like the age of 10, everything in front of you has already been decided. So then you're like, all right, well, if that's the case, then there's a lot of terrible things that happen in the world that you're now contextualizing as God's will.
Exactly.
So I was just curious, like, just to give some background of why I asked that, was because I feel like I've met people that Catholicism, Christianism, that kind of believe some believe God's will and some believe free will. So I was just curious.
Well, a good way to understand that is free will in that sense of the word is that you notice how God will get angry at people's actions and he will punish them because of those actions. If that wouldn't make sense, if God predestined you to do a certain action and he gets angry at you because you did that action, then that means that he's a fake. His emotions are not genuine. When it says that his anger blazed against the Israelites because they worshipped idols, is he the one predestining them to worship idols so that he'll get angry at them? No, it'll be like, no, I predestined you to do it. That's what it is. And I'm going to punish you. But there's no need for the anger that he feels. So that anger comes from, no, I expected you to know better, to not do that. Because you've done that, like a father would do, I'm going to punish you to let you know, don't do that. So it's free will in that sense of the word. Now, there are some people in nature that they too have free will, but because they are destined to fulfill certain roles, some of that free will is taken away. So let me give you an example. The Bible talks about the man of lawlessness, right? Who would come and issue in the chip and the 666 and all that stuff. Someone has to fulfill that prophecy. In order to fulfill that prophecy, part of your free will has to be taken away. But could it be that, or could it just be God's foresight that someone will do that and he's speaking it before it happens because he's calculated all the possibilities. It could be that. You understand what I'm saying?
So do you think like something like that, prophecy, can that be thwarted by people since you know, like if you believe that like God would have the foresight to see that happen, or like you said that some free will have to be taken away from whoever would fulfill that prophecy.
Right.
Either way, if you feel you have the knowledge that that's true and you have free will, do you feel that like, is it your position to thwart that?
You can try to, but you can't. It's almost, how do I put this?
And is it because like if you were to thwart that, you'd be going against God? Or
Well, that's the thing is, no one is gonna know if they fit that prophecy, so that they will say that I know I'm the one, so I'm gonna try and change it. You know what I mean?
meaning sort of like, not that you're the one, but if
Those outside trying to change it.
like if you like, so if on like a human level, right? So it's like you believe that this prophecy is true. Is that more like Antichrist type? Like that someone would essentially become Antichrist to bring?
Yeah, right.
So say like it's me, right? And you and everyone else, you can kind of, you're like, well, I've studied and TJ looks like he's fitting this sort of mold. Because you also have free will. Could you try to take action to stop me?
That's the thing is, I wouldn't know. No one would have that foresight. No one, because then that would mean you're God. And for maybe for the same reason of what you think people might try to do is the same reason why God makes sure that nobody knows, so that they can't try to go in the way. Even though if they try to, they still can't, because But like, you understand what I'm saying? Like, okay, let me give you an example of where someone has free will, but God takes it away for a purpose, right? When I was talking to someone a couple of days ago, and so that's why this coming to my mind. When Abraham was going to Egypt because of a famine, his wife was extremely beautiful. So one of the kings, Abimelech, took her to be like her own, but she belonged to Abraham. And Abimelech didn't touch her, right? And then God was punishing Abimelech's household because he took Abraham's wife. And then Abimelech told God, well, I didn't know that was Abraham's wife. He told me that was his sister, right? And then God says, I know you didn't know. That's why I was holding you back from touching her. So that means that God is preventing Abimelech from expressing his total free will, which probably would have led him to touching the wife of another man. So God can stop our free will, right? But we still ultimately have free will, because even after God told Abimelech, yeah, I was holding you back from touching her, he said, make sure that you do not touch her. You understand? So God was holding him back, but then afterwards too, he's still warning him not to do it. So he still has that free will, but there was a reason why he wasn't touching her before God told him that I kept you back, if you understand.
When it comes to like an Antichrist type of prophecy, why, like, if God could either foresee that, for the betterment of humanity, why would he not stop that? Or stop that person from becoming the Antichrist the way he stopped
Yes.
the Biblites from...
Yes, because what's going to happen in the last days, God is actually the one who is going to cause it.
Sure.
But it's not that he is wicked, because remember, if I can cause you pain right now, but I can also, after you've gone through that pain, for the sake of you learning a lesson, the pain that I'm causing you is not for the sake of just causing you pain. It's for the purpose of teaching you something, right? And knowing that I have the power to not only undo that pain, but to overabundantly reward you afterwards, to the point where now that you're in this bliss, you won't even remember the pain that you experienced before, ever, because you're in this bliss. That's the kind of power God has. So he's sovereign like that, right? So we as humans, we only think from our level, right? It's like a dog trying to understand the machinery of a car, right? A dog has its intellect. It's wise with its own wisdom, but it can never understand, knowledge that's above it, like human knowledge, but it's still intelligent. So it can still question this, but that question is not really warranted, because it's not on that level, right? So that's what it means to not question God, because he's all powerful. All the damage that's been done, he will literally undo it all. He says that in the future, all the pain that you've experienced in the past will not even be called to mind because of the abundance of joy he would give us. But we must go through what we're going through now to learn a lesson. And the ultimate lesson is that when he's not in the picture, we suffer. When he's not in the picture, we suffer. We need him. We have to understand that we need him. You know, that's like the gist of it. So to answer your question about the man of lawlessness, the pain that's going to come because of him, first of all, the ones that are going to experience the most pain are really those who are with God. That's one thing you have to understand. What Christ went through, that pain that he suffered, each of those who are going to reign with him have to go through that too. You can't reign with Christ if you didn't go through what he went through, right? That's why he's going to give each of those who conquers death a new name, like he himself received a new name, and they will sit with him on his throne like he sits with his Father on his throne, right? So don't think that Christians are not going to suffer. They're going to suffer, but God loves them so much. Why would he let them suffer? Because we have to learn a lesson. And also because the devil has many accusations against us, which will make it like pretty too long, you know. But the devil's accusation is pretty much that humans won't serve God under, you know, if the world is not a utopia. If the world is a utopia, people will serve God, of course. But if you take that utopia away from them, nobody will serve you. They will even curse you to your very face. They will raise their fist up at you. They will profane you. And God is saying, yeah, sure, some will, but not everybody. So in order to prove the devil a liar, this calamity has to befall us so that when people prove the devil wrong, the devil is quiet. And then you say, but why would God let us go through that? Because he will undo it anyway. He will undo the damage anyway. We just have to exercise that faith. You know, that's it.
No, I mean, it helps me
Understand the picture.
I'm not asking questions in like any kind of accusational type of way.
No, those are legitimate questions.
I'm just trying to learn.
Those are legitimate questions.
I'm just trying to learn, like, you know, like I said, as a kid, you think the way like you're taught, but like, you know, like I said, I was Roman Catholic, so I'm like, oh, well, I guess like everyone that believes in God must be a Roman Catholic, right? Mm-hmm. Until you get older and you're like,
there are many doctrines.
Well, it's just like,
yeah,
you know. So I'm just like, I'm learning here.
Yeah,
and I love to, like, outside of the Bible, other curiosity is I'm always fascinated historically and pragmatic, like flesh and blood,
tangible.
Like, what is the, like, how do you envision how Jesus was? Like, obviously when I grew up,
as a
you know, like as a man, like he was like a white hippie hanging from, you know.
No,
so I'm also just curious. You know, even when I was a kid, like, even that gets shattered for you as you get older.
Yeah.
And, you know, and you realize that most religions in they usually all, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but most at least recognize that Jesus was like a person that existed amongst the, like, widespread religions.
Right.
I mean, some he was like a prophet and some, you know, he wasn't, but he definitely existed.
Yeah.
And it's always interesting to me how it's like, because I'm pragmatic, so geographically, for me, I'm like, I always felt weird when I got into like my teenage years, because I'm like, well, history, like my geography in history class is saying that like this area of the world, people look like this.
Thank you.
And then I'm going on Sunday or like to school, and the flip book I'm going through is like everyone's white.
Yeah.
And as a kid, like you're like, that's another reason, like contextually, I used to be so confused when I was a kid about like what I was being told was the way I was supposed to believe and what people. So I'm just curious, just like human flesh and blood, like what was Jesus as a man? You know?
Your mentality is absolutely correct. He was an Arab.
Yeah.
He lived in Jerusalem. He was a Nazarene. He was so like the common man who lived in that land that when he said that he was who he was, people didn't believe him because he looked just like the regular person. Now, if you have a blonde hair, blue-eyed man who looked like that in the Middle East at that time, everybody would know, oh yeah, this guy is separate. You know, this guy, you know, he's unique. But he was so ununique. He was so common that When he would say that he's this, people want to stone him like, you're the carpenter. You're the son of Joseph. Like, who are you? You're nobody. That's why Christ said, no prophet is accepted in his hometown. You know, they look so regular. And that's the whole point of what God wanted to do. He didn't want him to stand out, you know. So that picture you see that's the problem with humans is they put their own colorings to things and they influence the youth.
Well, that was the Greeks, right? That presented that illustration first.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I'll be lying if I said I knew.
All right. Well, because the one thing that I do notice, and especially going back to what you're saying, I want to say, like, and to just put this out there, I believe in God. I do. And the one things that led me to believing in God was the conversations that I've had, some with Samuel, some with different people, that I do see some type of disruption in particular people's minds when they believe in too many things. Like, I see it, I witness it, you know? And I do see a genuine happiness to the core. Like, you can see it through their soul, you can see it through their eyes when someone believes in one thing, you know? Whether what that is to you, you know? But, like,
because there's sound of mind.
Yes.
So it was like, even in my absence of belief, like people could say, is in itself like a belief.
Right.
So it's that one thing you stick to. Yeah.
You know, like it's like I would never tell people. First of all, I would never tell people that I know everything. Right. I can only through my experiential life fuel what my beliefs are, and obviously some of that is broad stroke, and some of that's like directly related to things that are said to you when you're young, or told to you when you're young, or whatever it is. And it's sometimes that I feel like there's a misconception of like, if you say you're atheist or agnostic or, you know, whatever kind of, like, you have to check a box somewhere, that you're like miserable or like think everyone around you's foolish or whatever it is.
Right.
And I even see sometimes where I'm like, it's not like my absence of belief in organized religion doesn't mean that I'm void of humanity or compassion. In my mind, the idea that like I turn off like a light bulb makes me want to be a good person while I'm here and be kind to people and listen to other beliefs, you know, and respect that like my neighbor is going to believe differently, and that like I don't have an answer of if I'm right or wrong, or if you're right or wrong and you believe that you're right. It's not really like my place to kind of jump on you and say you're not.
Right.
But my sort of opposite of you actually fuels me to say, well, you know, one day I'm going to die. And I believe that my consciousness will be the same as it was before I was born. That I have no memory of before I was like in my mom's belly until I became into conscious life around whatever age you start to develop memory. And that in my mind is that I feel like I'm probably also going to slip back into that unconsciousness. And that if while I'm here for however many years I get, I could choose to be a good person or I could choose to be a bad person. And I could choose to listen to other people or I could choose not to listen to other people. I might have been more stubborn when I was younger. And as I've grown, it's helped me sort of even open up my mind that where like one day you might have heard me say I'm a staunch atheist who doesn't believe in any kind of unknown. As I've gotten older, I'm not as ignorant anymore to think that like there's obviously things going on that I do not understand.
Right.
But more me is that whatever it is so beyond human capacity. I don't even think it can speak to me. Is where the main difference between us would probably come. Is that it like there's no way that there could even be a gap bridged between human capacity and language and something that we've talked about last time. Like I'm more like, and I'm going to butcher there's like a theological philosophical concept of like, you have like a bowl, and that whatever it is that sort of created everything if you kind of more approach it from like the scientific perspective, is that the ingredients, the perfect balance of ingredients for everything is in that bowl. Mm-hmm. Humans can't have that perfect ingredient balance. And in order for like good and evil to exist, or right and wrong, or however we justice and injustice, that the thing that is beyond my comprehension has to have those ingredients within it in order for its world to have them in where they can become imbalanced. Mm-hmm. You know, like perfect balance is neither good or bad, right or wrong. But if you give it to fallible human people, in my mind, is where we start to, the imbalance, greed and rage and anger as opposed to peace. And, you know, you can try your best to even the scales, but we can never be that perfect bowl. To try to give some context to sort of like, just in a way that like if anybody else watches this and they think that about sort of like someone in my shoes, where that, you know, the view that can become with, if you say you're an atheist or an agnostic, or, you know, that has like its own sort of like, that you're this like doom and gloom, miserable human being that has no capacity for like understanding there's something beyond you.
Right. Well, you said something that you don't believe that this supreme being, if he does exist, could speak to you, right? Well, you know that there's, I don't know if, I forget the guy's name, but he's a linguist. And basically like the conclusion is that they don't know how there are so many languages in the world, because humans are incapable, even with our intellect, are incapable of creating even one language. Like if you and I wanted to create a universal language that the Japanese can speak, the Chinese can speak, Englishmen can speak, the Khans can speak, right? The Germans can speak. One universal language so that we can all speak the language, we couldn't do it. It's not. It's above our capacity. So how then did we get all the languages that we have if we can even get one? So in order to learn language, you have to be taught it. That's basically the deduction that linguists have concluded. But if you have to be taught language, who taught the first person how to speak? And how do you have so many languages today? It is literally, it's impossible, right? So language alone, that field alone proves that there's someone outside of humanity that teaches it how to do certain things, especially speech. And the way we are designed, no other creature can speak, but we're designed for speech. And not only are we designed for speech, but we actually do speak. And we speak a language that's, you know, intelligible, right? So whoever taught the first person how to speak, they taught their children. Whoever that person is, he obviously, if he's teaching us how to speak and he's made us to speak, and he's made us to speak to the air, and he's made us to speak in our consciousness, then, and we can't see who that person is, right? We can speak to him. And that's why he says, you would only find me if you search for me with all your heart. Because remember, when something is precious, we look for it. If something is always available to us, it's not precious anymore. It becomes precious when it's not easily attained, right? That's why gold is valuable. Not only because it looks good, but it's really, like, it's hard to get. Diamonds are valuable. All the gems and, you know what I mean? Like precious stones. So, but you have to go and search for those things. But what is more valuable than he who can't be seen? So it's almost like an insult to say, gold is more valuable than you, so I'm going to put in the work, the effort to find gold. But as for you, I've heard about you. You know, every culture talks about you. I've never seen you, but I'm not going to bother to look for you. Well, you know, he has pride in who he is. So if he's giving you the intellect to at least suspect an inkling that he might be there, and you don't bother to search for him, you're not going to find him. He's too valuable for that. You understand? So just as much as we'll put in effort to find precious things, we have to do that with him. More than we put in the effort to find precious things. And God says, when it is that you finally search for me with all your heart, I will make sure you find me. But until you do that, you know, you won't find him.
I want to share just some stories, and like it's also kind of what led me to believing in God, because I've had wild experiences in my life. Like I got hit by a bus. I was in a coma for 3 days, and like when I got back, I remember having this conversation with one of my friends at the time. His name was Jeremy, and I'm gonna eventually have him on the podcast. It's been hard to schedule. Your motherfucking ass to come over here. But when I visited him, it's been a couple of months after the accident. I couldn't see anybody. I had to be home because like they were like, you can't hit your head, you know, like stuff like this. So this is the first time me just meeting people after this whole event that has happened, you know. And I'm chilling with him, chopping it up with him, and he was telling me when he came to visit me at the hospital. And my memory was kind of foggy during that time. Like I remember bits and pieces, you know, it's just what it is. But I kind of remember him coming to the hospital, and I kind of remember him showing me weed, and I was like smelling it, like I wish I could smoke it. And then he told me, he's like, yo, you don't remember what you told me? I was like, nah, what do you mean? He goes, you said that you felt, cause I asked you like, yo, how'd you feel when you were in the coma? And apparently I told him that I felt like I was in this room, like this dark room, just waiting. Like I was waiting for someone like something was gonna tell me where to go, and from there I was like, oh shit, this is like purgatory or something, like waiting space to come back. And when I came back, I definitely felt a lot more appreciation to life and everything. But as life goes on, I still get certain. I guess it is what you were saying in a sense, like you have these thoughts as you're living life, like whoa, what is that? Why do I have a gut feeling? Why is there certain instances where it does feel like I should be pulling back from something, or I should be going towards something? And that undeniable feeling of me not knowing what that is, I'm like, that's God. and then I was like, and then there was like some time afterwards, I'm chilling, and yeah, I smoke weed. This is gonna be a weed story, but shut up. I'm chilling. I'm chopping it up with this girl that I knew. And we were going to this spot in Forest Hills, Austin Street. And there's like this old train station and whatever. And by that area, you cannot find parking. And it was raining. And I'm like, fuck. But once we got there was parking. And I was like, what? Crazy. Like, for me, it's like you never find parking in that area. For it to be right there at the specific spot, it was effortless. You know what I'm saying? I've told you this. And
no, you didn't tell me this, but I know Forest Hills, yeah.
Oh, okay. I know. I feel like I've told you this story, though. But after that, we go to the spot where we're gonna smoke. We're smoking, chilling, right? There's like this homeless guy and a couple other people there. And I say homeless guy because he was like obviously homeless. And you know what I'm saying? I'm just saying. And there was these two women that came by, and they gave him food, and they asked anyone else if they wanted food, and we're like, no, it's okay, thank you. And then they asked, hey, does anyone want a prayer? And this is what they were saying, that like we're Christian missionaries from California. And I was like, you know what, okay. The girl that I was chilling with, she didn't believe in God. She didn't want to she was like, nah, okay, I'll do it just because I did it, you know what I mean? This is the part that was wild, and I've never felt this in my life. So the prayer started off understandable, you know, we send these prayers out, because she asked me who did I wanted to send the prayers to. I said my family in Venezuela. And then she was like, we're sending these prayers out to Axel's family in Venezuela, to his mom, to, like he's saying to all this. And then they said the same things to the girl. Then I just didn't understand it. Like, it was like she was speaking in tongue. But the moment that happened, I felt a crazy rush of energy that felt like it could kill me, but it didn't. And then I felt like a sense of like people are gonna die, but it's okay. And then I cried, yo. Like I cried so much, and then I hugged her, and then I left because I just couldn't. Like my emotions couldn't take it. It was crazy. And then that was just another moment that I felt like, whoa, like that was God. Like, you know what I mean? And I didn't know how I could describe it. Yeah. You know. And that's when I started to believe in God and more. And then I recently got a Bible because I wanted to learn from my own instead of getting from what other people telling me.
Right.
But that's where I'm at.
That expression, people are gonna die, but it's gonna be okay. Like that's that's pretty much the story of life. It's about living and dying.
Sure.
You know, and even if you're like God's best friend, you're gonna die, but it's okay. You know, it's because all the work put into you, right? For every second, all your cells. I mean, if you look at I don't know if you study into like the working of the cells and the body and the anatomy, but there is so much work. You know how you say multi-trillion-dollar project, or this guy is not expendable because he's a walking multi-trillion-dollar governmental project because they put so much money into him. You know, like Jason Bourne and the Bourne Identity, because they put so much money into him. Like he's so valuable. When he's lost, is a problem. They won't put money into something like that just to kill it. It makes no sense. We are not a multi-trillion-dollar project. It's beyond comprehension. Just the cell, one skin cell is not 1 trillion, is not a multi-trillion-dollar. It's beyond that. So your whole body, why would God put all that, or why would whatever made us put all that work into us just for us to grow old, suffer, and die? Like it's pointless. It's like the biggest tragedy story that can ever be told. You know, so this is not it. There is more to it. You know, there is more to it. And yeah.
The flip, I would say, like I would say that it is pointless. Like, and that's like not necessarily a negative thing. In that, like, again, that emboldens my experience now while alive is where purpose comes into place for me. That like our conversation is purposeful here. This is meaningful. I'm gonna leave today and think about this and hope that it expands some part of my horizon and my thinking, expands next time I'm discussing something with someone that thinks differently than me, that like I can take lessons from the moment. And that if I feel that when I die, everything after that might be pointless, that doesn't mean that right now my life is pointless.
Right.
Like that our lives are pointless.
I see what you mean.
That we can have. So that's sometimes where I struggle with, where I would say things that you went through. Like sometimes I feel like, so like I always think about like sports, right? The end of a game, if it's like, say it's Russell Wilson, whether he wins or loses, he thanks God. And I always found that odd because I'm like, well, if you won and you thank God, but then like the other quarterback is also Christian, and so is that like God played into him losing?
Yeah.
But it's also like you work really hard at your position and what you do, and that
Why
the
give God
credit
glory?
the credit also belongs to the human.
Right.
And sometimes I think self-epiphany, like people should also take credit within themselves, that they're like allowing themselves to have other things come in and help them grow. And I don't have it, but then I would say I don't have an issue if someone says that they feel that that's the presence of God for them.
Right.
Because, you know, it's, or like, you talk to people that go through like AA or stuff, right? Like the higher power is like a thing in there, and that higher power isn't necessarily God for everybody. The higher power becomes a way to get through, like being human, struggling, having the fear of death, you know, knowing that other people around you, you're going to lose them, and that there's going to be vices you go through and all this sort of stuff. And so you adapt belief or higher power or God or sort of something that helps you get to the next day. When I was younger, I might have viewed that and been more callous. But as I'm older and sitting here and giving you the me now, you know, like it's the more you talk to people, the more you understand what people go through and suffering, that like if something helps them get to the next day or believe or just be a good person, you know, like I used to have this view of like, where I think I had more of an issue with organized religion than I did with like the
Spirituality.
idea of God.
Right. That's why I don't say I'm religious. I
You
say
know,
I'm
from like
spiritual.
my experiences in the Catholic Church, or like I've taken trips where I've gone to like mega churches out of curiosity with someone I knew that was a part of them.
I hate those.
I was actually going to ask you about like that guy. So like, and you know, and you go to them and you're like, kind of like, what's going on here? They're preaching politics from the pulpit. They're basically like pressuring people into self-funding the church, and you're and you like, and you're kind of like, all right, well, maybe when I was a kid, I didn't know how to express what my issues were, and as I got older, it was like I think it was more like an organized religion thing where I was like, this groupthink doesn't work for me, in which you're kind of trying to tell me that like, if I don't dress this way, do this thing, say this thing, blah blah, like I'm gonna go to hell,
Right.
and you're kind of like, whoa, that's a lot to throw on a kid. You're like, whoa. And you can, you know, and then you can live in fear your whole life that what you were told when you were younger in this organized thing that like, oh man, like I was pre-damned before I even came out of the womb.
Makes no sense.
You know, and you're kind of like, which I was curious to ask you. I have other Christian friends. When it comes to like the whole evangelical, televangelical, like uniquely American Christianity, do you feel that you bear judgment from other people because that's so popular here in America that once they hear you say you're Christian, it's an automatic like that has like the mega churches and the American evangelical Christianity is a very unique thing to our country. They try to do missions in other places, but like the Olsteins and the, you know, I think it's like he could fit as many as the people as Madison Square Garden can. And a lot of that comes with like a certain judgment from the world and within America in a negative light.
Yeah.
Do you feel as a Christian you sometimes have to bear the brunt of that because it's so focused on and popular here that the minute you say you're a Christian, people are like, you know, jump at you because they then say, well, my view of Christianity is this kind of this particular version of it.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't feel bad and it's no pressure because we understand that the Bible is the sole authority, but off of that sole authority, anyone who reads it can have their own perspective on it. You know, whether it's a popular perspective doesn't mean I have to hold to it just because I'm under that, you know, branch of belief. So like with the Joel Osteen and these mega churches, I would say the more popular it is, the more demonic it is. Always keep that like rule of thumb, right? If it's pushed in schools, if it's pushed in colleges, if it's pushed in churches, and it's major like organizations, is demonic because the devil rules the world right now. So he will not let truth be perpetuated as easily, you know. So 9 times out of 10, most Christians believe in hellfire, that God is going to torture you forever and ever and ever. Like, I mean, do they understand what forever is? That they're spewing this? The Bible doesn't even teach that. But because it's so widespread, the moment you think about it, oh yeah, it's that. You know, so and that's also a reason why many people who want to believe in God don't believe in God. They say they can't believe in a God who would torture someone for all eternity. It makes no sense. But the devil wants to perpetuate that lie about their father so they don't even want to get to know him because already the anger is built up. Because they might have a loved one who is dead that they're presuming is being tortured.
We probably then might agree on organized religion.
I hate organized religion. Yeah.
So like for you, there's no like set sort of like day of the week that you you attend the mass or sort of like you know when you go back to like how like Roman Catholicism. I mean, like it was imparted on us that like if you didn't go to like Sunday mass, like you're actually like stacking up your chances to go to hell pretty much. Although that you could ask for forgiveness, but the idea is that if you died suddenly, you wouldn't have had the chance to do so. And it was always kind of like, okay, wow, that's a lot to like take in right now.
Yeah.
You just Yeah, no, and I feel like the more you like that I converse with people sort of about that, even particularly that do believe in God, you're like, I believe, but also not with organized religion,
Right.
which is a facet. So like, how would you like? But do you believe in like any sort of congregation? So like other people that believe just like you, like is there a congregation?
It's because the only thing the Bible speaks about congregating is not that it's mandatory, but that it's recommended for the sake of upbuilding each other and encouraging each other so that we can stay strong.
Community,
yeah. Because when the persecution begins, it's nice to have someone to be there with. You know, it's a lot easier to die with your friend in war than to die alone. You know what I mean? Like you when you go to war with your best friend, you see him get shot. You don't care if you get shot. You going down with him. You know, it's easier to die together.
Friend.
Yeah, exactly. A real friend. It got to be a genuine friend to, you know.
So that so from organized religion. So then do you believe in like do you believe it's your job? Do you believe that that's part of your journey as a person is to like convert people, or that like they have to find it on their own?
No, it's to show it to them, and try to use the best reasonings possible to help them to understand that what you're saying is the truth, and then from then on they have to make their personal choices. Like even Paul would do, he would reason from the scriptures with them. And what the other group would do is they would test night and day to see if whether what Paul was saying was the truth or not. So it takes two to tango. You know, yeah.
But you don't strike me as a person that's sort of like when I was at that church, it was like, I don't know, it was like a vibe. That like
judgmental.
As they were asking me questions, it obviously didn't get unfriendly. But that like I was your value, like I could have been as nice as I wanted to be, or as I needed to be, or myself. But as the pieces were starting to fit, that like there was an atheist attending a televangelical church, a Christian church.
Yeah,
it was almost like you almost feel it feels adversarial. Like she's allowed like someone that shouldn't be here, like in, and I was like, "Whew, this feels like I know if I would have said certain things,
it would have been over."
Like it would have been. So I kind of kept my beliefs within because I was like, "Well, I want to be respectful. I'm somewhere else," but they're also asking me questions because they're curious because this is how they were raised from, like, as well, infancy. So like they have access to someone from somewhere else that believes something else. And I felt like people more my age, it was like cool. But then some of the elder people are kind of definitely like, so what do you think? What do you think about this? What do you believe in this? Like, what's your political alignment? And you're starting getting that, and you're like, if I'm really honest here, I feel like there's going to be an issue, not just for me, but for her because she let me come with her. And I was like, it's sort of the you don't strike me that way. It's just sort of I don't even know where I was going with this, but that like.
It's not everyone.
They had like spoke on like missionary type stuff, and from my perspective, it seemed very forceful. Which is where you're basically saying like, well, I try to reason with people and say this is sort of what I believe, and then you let them go with that information and decide. Where they more felt like it was like, if you do not accept this, you are then rejected, like completely, like, and there was a very extreme isolation within there, which I guess probably just goes back to the organized religion thing. Exactly. There's just like an extreme isolation to where there cannot be conversation with other people that don't think the same way, in that kind of adversarial sort of thing, which kind of freaks me out as a person that, particularly, like I said, the American brand of Christianity. Yeah. For me, is a little bit of like a scary thing with how it's become so infused with like political agenda or
business,
human rights or business, and like it's because it's profit. It's for profit. It's for profit, non-tax paying multi-million-dollar industry.
Yeah.
Like, and so you're like, but then you're like, well, like we were saying before, contextually with any empire, you're like, in a capitalist society, you're like, sooner or later, someone's going to profit off religion.
Right.
You know? And it's sort of just, I don't even know where I was going with that, but it's just like, now I'm just going down a road of like, that actually gives me fear as someone. I think even if I believed, like you believe in God, or if I was Jewish or Muslim, the American the capitalistic American brand of Christianity does kind of give me a very sort of human fear to a degree.
Distaste for it.
Because we're sitting here having a conversation,
Yeah.
and I know we're going to leave be fulfilled in some way having this conversation. I do not feel at any point in time that like you're you're hostile towards me or that I'm hostile towards you.
No. And that's why both.
And that, or like that we wouldn't try to like tear down other people for what they do or don't believe in, and that we would not probably be okay with organizational groupthink trying to influence everyone else's life. I guess that's what I sort of is how like in our country we're supposed to have separation of church and state, but we do have this unique brand of sort of American Christianity that is kind of morphing the two together to sort of like say like, well, the way we believe is actually how we feel we have to legislate for all the rest of you to believe.
Right.
And that, as just a citizen of the country, it kind of like, it's a little intimidating. It's a little sort of like, and you also feel when you talk to people on a ground level, most of us don't think that.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, then how the hell do they have all this power? If most people I speak to are like, yeah, no, I'm not cool with that. You're like,
because remember, if it's the majority, if it was the popularity, then 9 times out of 10, it's not the way it's supposed to be.
So yeah, I don't know where I went on that tangent, but it was more curious that I saw that, you know, like within our conversation, we could be as diametrically opposed on like if we believe in God or not. But even though like there's like a common ground of like the organized religion take or the sort of like forcing things upon people, well, I could kind of feel we both were not cool with that. So I was just curious to go
If
down.
I may, both of you guys, I want to know what is the biggest takeaway from this conversation that we had today for yourself, and what would you like to share to the audience about how this conversation may be portrayed in their own life?
So one thing I think is, to only go back to the last time we spoke, that like anyone that watches this, you have to watch it with the context of the conversation that we're having. Because last time, like I think I told a story about when I was 13, a question I had asked my CCD teacher about like where people that didn't, like before the invention of religion, people that didn't have the access to Christianity, where would they have gone when they died?
Well, that was a question I wanted to answer.
But it was like, but within the context of our conversation, it was me telling a story about like 12-year-old me, intaking that information in that experience, and how that shaped part of, and how that context got thrown out the window by people that watched it and were like, oh, this 38-year-old man still like that. They like, and it was like, my one thing is the people that watch. There's a context to the conversation we're having.
Yeah.
And to always keep that in mind.
Yes.
Mainly the takeaway is to let down the walls of having conversations with people that don't think the same way as you is beneficial to the whole of society. Whether you're always going to hit walls where you're going to be like, well, I just don't believe that, and I don't believe that. Or like, I believe this, and I don't believe that. And like, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Where we kind of do this very tribal, divisive thing, very much so in our country and across the world too. But that conversation, it's so cliches are real. Whether it's a relationship, a friendship, communication is key. Conversation is key. You can thrive with conversation, and respectful conversation only lends to the expansion of knowledge and the expansion of your compassion as a person. Like when I was young and only wanted to like be in a bubble of like, I don't believe in God, I'm an atheist. You don't actually like grow anywhere. Like you get a lot of people that high five you for having the same thought process, but you don't grow as a person, and your compassion doesn't grow. Conversations like this allow for like the heart to actually grow. Like, you know,
And there's understanding for the opposite side.
like I'm gonna leave here feeling warm today, like the literal feeling of warmth, because I had a great conversation on a Saturday with someone that I might not have ever had a conversation with before,
Right.
in a respectful manner, in which I hope we both took away at least the acknowledgement of other perspective.
Right.
And that's like, especially I feel like today's day and age, like everything is like, it's like
Polarized?
A or B or
Right.
black or white. It's just like, and there's like tons of people in between there that
That's
are
why
like
what's going
trying
on in
to
the
have
Middle East now.
conversations about everything, and it's like nuance gets destroyed because there's no nuance in a 120 character tweet.
Yeah.
There's no nuance in a headline. There's no nuance in a viral clip. There's nuance in conversation. But no one has the attention span to want to like engage in it anymore.
Well, that last month I got over 2,000 minutes. I don't know. People have been watching.
But no, I think what happens is, as cyclical as history is, so is human behavior.
Yes.
And as I think
Yes.
you're seeing people are like, I'm actually kind of getting really sick of the like this or that, no nuance kind of, no context, no conversation. I feel like we had so much of that for so long. Social media influenced a lot of that. And I think a lot of people are sick of that. So now you're seeing
Reverse.
it's going the other way where it's like, we have to start having conversations again or we will get nowhere as a society. There will be no peace anywhere. There will, and it goes from economics to politics to thought process and belief, where you're just like, if you're just so constantly like, and if you're allowing, again, people above you to tell you how you're supposed to think.
Yeah.
And that was a very long-winded way to say like, have conversations with just people that think differently than you.
Well, I mean, that's what I was gonna say that I took from this is that no matter what, like anyone who has an opposite opinion of you, there's always a common ground that you can stand on, right? And from that common ground, that's where you build. You know, because if you're standing on your ground and he's standing on his ground, there's no common ground. It's like there's water. You can't build on that. So, I mean, that's what I'll take from it.
Dope, man. And both of you guys, where can the people find you?
Go by the Everyday Bite on I get most social medias. I guess I'm most active on Instagram, or if you just look up T.J. McGOWAN, you can find my books and stuff like that.
And for me, my name is SAMUEL FORJOE, so you just type that in YouTube, and you'll find me.
So yeah.
Ago, it's the conversation. Yeah. Take your mind different places. Now you know.